Hey guys, Kristin here. Due to a mini technology fail, the video for this week's episode is corrupted. No big deal for those of you that listen on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, etc. For our viewers on YouTube, I just wanted to give you a heads up that this week you won't get to enjoy our smiling faces. The episode is still here though, so keep listening. Have no fear, we'll be back in full form next Friday. And as always, thanks for stopping by and keep taking those courageous steps towards a life filled with purpose, connection, and love. In this episode, we talk about discovering your true fears. What is it we're actually afraid of? Plus, I play guinea pig for one of Matt's coaching activities. Welcome back, y'all. I am your host, Kristin Robinson. I am the owner and head coach of Thrive Coaching Studio. We help women explore their fear and how we can walk through that fear to own our greatness. I work with individuals and I also host a number of workshops here in Chicago. I am joined today by my good friend, Matt Maxwell.
Hi. I just got to say, I liked how you said Chicago just then.
Was it very Chicago-y?
I think so. Yeah, it's funny
It's
because
like
I don't think of you as having that
Yeah, it's
accent.
the only word I have a Chicago
It was
accent on.
nice. Chicago? Or I don't know exactly what it is. I live here, but I don't really get it. Hi, yeah, I'm Matt. I'm a coach, author. I don't know, writer? Writer.
Yeah.
I haven't published anything. I feel like once you publish, then you're an author.
Then you move from
writer to author.
To
So I'm a writer, coach, leader, teacher.
Yes. Yeah, you do all sorts of things.
I've played
volleyball. You work
volleyball.
with individuals? Oh, all right.
Volleyball player.
Do you prefer hardwood or sand volleyball?
It depends on the weather.
That makes sense.
When it's warm, I like sand. I wouldn't like it today, though.
Maybe. Who knows?
Yeah, maybe. That's true.
You would have a hard time, I think, with any sort of setting or spiking because it's so windy.
Yeah, it's
even
super
the
windy.
perfect set would just be like gone.
I was waking up this morning. We're in Chicago, if it's not clear, and I was waking up. And it sounded like, and there's like kind of mostly alleyway. I'm like on the back side of the building, closer to the alleyway. And it sounded like all of Chicago was blowing through the alleyway.
Yeah.
Like all of it. Like chairs and benches and like pits of buildings. And maybe like people were kind of caught in like, it was just all.
Bicycles.
Just like noise of the city blowing through my alleyway.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's windy out there today.
Okay, so today we're going to...
Boom. Nice transition. Very smooth.
Thanks. Today we are going to, I think we're going to look at fear. And in particular, what is it? Mm-hmm. We talk about it. I'm afraid of, and I think we all kind of have this vague sense of what we're talking about. And my experience when I really start to get present and notice what am I really experiencing in my kind of mental activity, thought patterns, and in my body is that there's kind of different types of fear, or there's different ways that fear manifests itself. Mm-hmm. And so, as we're looking at what is courage, a lot of that is like in relationship to fear.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Kind of in spite of or in the face of fear.
Right.
And so getting present to what is fear actually for me in my life, how is it, what does it feel like, and where does it come from, can be a part of cultivating the courage that we really want to have.
Yeah, I think the exploration of fear allows us to normalize it and to then look at it from a different perspective, which then leads to being able to choose courage more often, I think. I feel fear before I think about fear, I think. I think I have a physiological kind of like reaction first, and then my brain catches up. But I was just reading an article yesterday that fear, all it is a chemical. It's like a release of a chemical in your body, and they can recreate it in labs. So they can like flood your body with this chemical and you're afraid. Even if you're just like sitting on the couch watching TV, not like happy TV, nothing to be afraid of, they can flood your body with this chemical and all of a sudden you're afraid. So it's, I mean, it's just a chemical. But we're so hardwired, I think, from way, way, way back when, right? When we actually had a lot of things to be afraid of, like being eaten by a lion.
Oh, I see. Our ancestors.
Yes, like way, 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 way back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was even thinking like when I was 1 and completely helpless.
Right.
And dependent on the people around me.
Do you think 1-year-olds feel fear? They just can't recognize it as that?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say.
I just think it's really curious.
Yeah, it is, because I think I feel like maybe they are like the same fundamental chemical sensation. But I feel like for me, there's different varieties of fear or scenarios of fear that seem to be generated by different things.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's a different reaction, like, what do you call this scale? What do you call it? A scale. Like a scale too, because there's some things that you feel fear so big, and then other things they're just like this little fear.
Yeah, and even things. So here's some examples. One is last week I went in to do a series of workshops at a company that hired me to do some workshops. And as I was going in, I kind of had this stage fright kind of fear sensation.
Sure.
Like heart pounding, just like high nerves, nervous energy, heart pounding.
Dry mouth?
I don't know if my mouth was dry. It's pretty, well, I don't know. I'll pay attention next time.
Yeah.
Maybe dry mouth, but it was like this heightened, and I experienced that in my acting world. I guess I'm also an actor. Did we mention that in the list?
It's hard to say in that intro.
People
that you
debate
did
whether
today.
I'm a better volleyball player or actor.
Interesting.
No one debates that.
That's why I said interesting.
Maybe on my very best day of volleyball and my worst day of acting, it was about even. Okay. In my acting world, now I'm mostly, when I go on stage, I'm usually very well prepared for it. I feel there's not as many nerves, but usually like opening night, the first time I've performed something in front of other people, there's just like this nervous fear, like heart pounding. What if it goes wrong? A lot of that's kind of vaguely future based about how I might mess up or what I might forget or will the lines all be there?
Yeah.
Or, how will this all work out? So there's that fear. That for me is like a higher energy and can actually be really helpful.
Yes.
In providing the kind of adrenaline that will help me perform the way I want to.
Useful fear.
Yeah, maybe. And maybe all fear is useful. But that in particular, like it's a heightened energy kind of fear that I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And then I noticed this week I was doing an exploration. So I'm working on a couple of books. They're both really meaningful to me. I really want to write them, and it's really scary for me for some reason. And it feels like it's a very different experience because it's not this kind of heightened adrenaline, heart thumping kind of fear. It's like dread. It's like way deeper. It's like in the pit of my stomach. It's like there's like a deep resistance to writing it and writing the books. And it feels very different to me. This kind of, it's like a deeper, it's like dread. I don't know how else to describe it.
Yeah.
And I was trying to get present to, usually with fear, I notice the body sensations. And then I look at what are the stories that are going on in my mind that are connected with this body sensation. And sometimes it's very clear. Like in my relationship, there's fear, and it's really clear that there's stories around, how this went before. in
Right.
other relationships.
Right.
And that turned out awful, and that turned out painful, and that turned out this way. And so there's fear of future based on the past.
Yep.
And that like mental conversation is really clear for me.
Yeah.
So at least I can see like, hey,
Right. It's clear what's going on, what's happening. Like, okay,
Yeah,
I can
mentally.
identify.
why there's fear.
Yeah, what's happening
Because there's this conversation about it being like it was in the past, and we're kind of, I think a lot of fear is just geared towards pain, right? It's
Yeah.
geared towards pain avoidance.
I think a lot of it is having gone through things in the past is like one sort of fear. And then I think we also experience equally, probably often, at least I do, is the fear of the unknown or the fear of the unfamiliar too on the flip side. So it's
Yeah.
kind of like we've got these stories in this narrative about how it went before or how it's always gone.
Yeah.
And so we bring that with us into
Yeah. And so it's going to go that way again.
new relationships, new situations. And so even if we know like this is new, this is different, somewhere in the back of our minds, our mind is trying to like be like, no, it's going to go the same. You should be afraid of this. Remember
Yeah.
how it went last time? And then on the flip side, it's, I have no idea how this is going to turn out. And that's equally scary,
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting to see how that fear can be really, really useful in certain scenarios. Like we touch the hot stove,
Right.
right? And it hurts.
Yes.
And there's then a message in our brain that's like, don't do that.
Right. Useful fear.
Yeah.
I would call that useful
Yeah,
fear.
that's really useful, right? And there's a
Right.
reason we're like genetically designed with that kind of fear.
Right. Look both ways before you cross the street. Because if you get hit by a car, that's gonna hurt.
Yeah, and
Like,
but that one's interesting because I feel like that's different.
Interesting.
Well, what I mean is like it still may be useful,
Right.
but most people
have
have
never
not been hit.
Right. But I've never touched
So
a hot
we have
stove
other people
either.
program it into. I'm saying there's a difference.
Oh.
Like there's the programming we get
Right.
of don't do that.
Yes.
Because you
Oh,
might.
Yep.
And sometimes that might be great.
Right.
Looking both ways,
true physical
probably always
safety,
great for us.
That's a good thing.
But we'll, in other scenarios, accept the shoulds that were given by other
Yeah.
people as if they're also valid
Right.
or designed for our
And
protection.
I think the ones that are given to us by other people that aren't necessarily regarding our physical safety, sometimes are never actually verbalized
Yeah.
to us.
Yeah.
They're just things that we observe in our surroundings, like, well, this is how we do it.
Yeah.
And you know, you observe people being timid about certain things or not discussing certain topics. And so you're programmed, even though it's never verbalized, we don't talk about this. You just, you observe it and it soaks in.
What are examples of that for you?
I think for me, probably like feelings in general. Like we never like really grew up talking about feelings other than like, I mean, my family's very like, I love you, I support you, like whatever. But we don't, growing up, it wasn't like we talked about like, what's going on with you in this situation. Like we never really talked about that. And I think like we don't talk about other people's business. We don't talk about our business. And that I don't think was ever necessarily verbalized. I just observed other people talking about stuff and recognized that we don't.
And you never got like chided if you went in that direction?
Oh, interesting. I don't think I probably ever thought to go in that direction in front of my parents, if that makes sense. Like, I was never bold enough to generally like kind of
Even try?
misbehave.
Because
Like,
don't you
it's
have
not
older
worth-
siblings?
I do. I have an older brother
Yeah.
and a younger brother.
Okay.
Yeah. And like, we're all, I think generally speaking, at least how I remember it, maybe my parents can come on the podcast sometime and prove that this is totally an inaccurate like memory.
Yeah.
I think we all, for the most part, were good kids,
Right.
and didn't really like cause trouble or like rock the boat too much.
Yeah.
I think we did kind of as we were expected to do.
Yeah. And so there was never like, Kristin, don't talk about that.
Oh, I'm sure there probably was.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like,
because
just
if
little-
anybody was going to talk about stuff they weren't supposed to, it would definitely be me, more so than my brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I usually was like, it just never occurred to me to not talk about it. And then I probably did get
Something-
chided. Yeah, and then it was like, oh, okay. I'm never going to talk about that again.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We make those decisions, and it's like we forget because we were so little. Like, we don't
Right.
remember where all of these things come from that make us really uncomfortable, even though we know, like, objectively,
Right.
there doesn't actually seem to be anything unsafe or wrong
Right.
about what a certain action or sharing certain things, but there's like a deep fear around it.
Yeah.
Probably that's from something we learned or picked up when we were little.
Yep.
So we've got fear that might be really helpful for us,
Right.
In terms of like avoiding physical danger and
Right.
pain. And then there's like, for me, like kind of adrenaline fear,
Yep. I was just going to say that.
you know, that's that sometimes if I'm like really listening to it, like it can seem unpleasant. It
Yeah.
can seem pretty uncomfortable.
Right.
But it can also give us a pretty nice boost.
Yeah.
I've got kind of like this dread fear of some things, and when I was really looking at it, I spent some time this week going like, what is this dread about?
Yeah.
Like I couldn't even get present to some things. Like I said, it's really clear what the mental activity is. Be careful, because if you, then this will happen,
Right.
and that would be bad. And I can at least parse out the story.
Yeah.
Other cases, it's just like, wow, there's just dread here. And I tried to parse out like, okay, I'm afraid of what people will think about what I write. I'm afraid of judgment. And it seemed to go deeper than that. Like it was just dread. It was just this massive feeling of like physical dread.
Interesting.
And I'm sure there's more to discover
Right.
about what's there. And I was mostly just like interesting, just like, wow, there is like something really deep and heavy
Yeah.
that's scared of doing this. Or that's generating fear of doing this or something. So we've got those fears. I think there's another fear that is... Wait, did you have something to say?
No.
Okay, good. Just interrupt me.
I will.
Good.
Like, did I breathe heavy? Was
Yeah.
that your cue?
No, and
like,
in all of
wait.
this conversation, maybe this is obvious, but I think the invitation is for whoever's listening. Obviously, we're speaking from our personal experience, and there's some things we've read and learned about this. And there's probably a lot you could read about people that study fear their entire lives. And,
Yep.
But I think the value for the listener would be in just looking at it in their own life
Yeah.
and getting present to what is actually going on. Because a lot of the time, fear is just kind of this, it's like this vague dread. No, I couldn't do that. I just
Right.
couldn't do that.
Yep.
You know, and to actually just get present to like, oh, well, what is this?
Right.
What
Why
is
am
the
I?
sensation?
Right.
What am I being told in my mind?
What's the message that my body is trying to give me right now?
Yeah.
And my mind is, yeah.
Or that's just what's being believed.
Yeah. What's
know.
the story that I'm telling myself right now about this situation? Yeah. And we typically do a practice at the end of each episode. And I don't know that we need to like wait till the end, because maybe we'll end up with more than one for this episode. But I think that that's a really powerful practice to just, over the course of the next week, really get in tune with like, what's the physiological sensation that you're having? What's your mind telling you about the situation? Like, what's the inner dialogue that's happening? And then taking it, a step further to say like, where's that coming from?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's two really interesting ways to explore it. And And for me, a lot of the purpose of exploring it is to gain freedom from it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And not that sometimes I'm like, oh, this feels scary, so I've got to do it.
Right.
And it's fun.
Yeah.
It's fun to just be like, I know logically there's nothing to be afraid of. And
Yeah.
so even though I feel fear, I'm going for this.
Yep.
And sometimes it's like there's massive opportunity on the other side of that.
Yeah.
Other times it's like, oh, I'm afraid of this and I don't really want to do it anyway. So
Right.
whatever, who cares?
Right.
Like,
Yeah. Fear
I'm
wins.
afraid of blindfolding myself and walking across the street. Like, I'm not going to do it just because I'm afraid of it.
Right.
But there are things that I do care about, like writing my books, where it's like, I'm going to keep leaning into this.
Right.
But I think there's two fun ways to explore fear, and maybe way more. But two come to mind. And those two are, one is to just really be with the physical experience of the fear.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you feel it? There's nausea in my stomach, and there's tension in my throat, and maybe dryness in my mouth, and
Right.
tension in my forehead, and it just experience and stay with it.
Stay with it is
Yeah.
like the key, because we don't like to be comfortable, or we don't like to be uncomfortable. I think, you
Yeah.
know, so I think we rush through it
Yeah.
to get out of it.
Yeah.
Like, oh, this is uncomfortable. I don't like this feeling. And so instead of just sitting in it, we rush through it.
Yeah.
I think. So I think it's hard, but try it.
Yeah, it's cool because
Yeah.
if we can get to be okay with the feeling of fear, then those things we really want to do.
Yeah.
We want to public speak, and there's massive fear when we want to. If we can learn to just be with it
Yep.
and not have to run away from it and escape it, then that opens up a lot of freedom.
Yeah.
And we may just discover things.
Yeah.
As we're just really present with what we're experiencing.
And I think, sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
I mean, I think that's true for all emotion, not just feelings of fear, but all emotion,
Yeah.
both good feeling and bad feeling emotion. Just learning to be comfortable in it and not rush through it. I mean, I think we think about rushing through bad. I'm using air quotes for those of you listening and not watching. We don't like bad emotion, but I think we do it also for good.
Right, and
like
what I would say
joyful
is we don't
emotion.
even rush through it. We rush around it.
Yeah.
It's like
Yes.
skirting the edges of it or
100%.
something like that.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
instead of allowing ourselves to experience whatever's
Yeah.
there.
With no judgment.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we talk about the judgment of ourselves a lot,
Yeah.
but rightfully so, because it's something we all deal with. And to say like, oh, I don't like this. I'm getting out of this. I shouldn't be feeling this way. And so I'm just going to detour around it instead of like feel it.
Yeah.
Feel it and then explore it. Like, where did this come from? What's like, why does this keep coming up for me?
Yeah. And as long as we're not comfortable experiencing any emotion, that emotion controls us.
Yeah.
Because we have to spend our life escaping it or going around it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And if we can learn to be with it, then we actually get freedom from it.
Yeah.
But it's only by being with it and not having to escape. And actually discovering there is nothing so horrible I can't be with it.
Yes.
I can just be with it. And actually there's like a huge gift and release in staying with it.
Yeah.
And I think in that process, there's like a curiosity we can bring to it that's not necessarily a scientific exploration of it. So sometimes we're like, I got to discover why I feel this way. Why?
Yeah.
And that might be fine. And maybe we'll discover that. But there's also just a curiosity of, what is this actually like? Oh, wow, there's this tension in my stomach. What is that? You know, and just bringing like a curiosity and a wonder to all of that experience can create a space for us to experience it and not be so afraid of it.
Yeah.
Afraid of feeling it, the fear.
Yeah. Or any of
other
the feelings.
emotion.
Yeah.
So I think that's really fruitful, just to be with it, see what it's like, notice the physical sensations, and also notice that it shifts. Even just staying with it, you'll see that, oh, now it's moving up into my chest, and my chest is getting tight, and now it's going up into my forehead. For me, it's like on my forehead a lot. So that's one place of like discovery and a way to become empowered in the experience of fear. I think another one is to really ask, like, what am I actually afraid of?
Yeah.
What am I, and by that, I mean, like, there's going to be suggestions in our brain, right? So it's like, I had a horrible breakup, I'm in a new relationship, and my brain's like, you're going to feel pain again. It's going to be awful. And it's really no different than you touched the stove, you got hurt, don't go near the stove again.
Absolutely.
And the thing about that is that that's really helpful when there's a stove that's always
Yes.
hot and pretty much always going to burn you.
Yes.
But in the context of a relationship, maybe you'll get burned again.
Right.
And maybe you'll have what you really desire, the partnership and connection and family. And there can be all kinds of things that aren't that pain.
Right.
And if we believe the story that our brain is telling us, we'll never get to experience it.
Absolutely.
So in that context, to actually get present to, what am I being told is horrible and awful that will happen if I proceed down this course?
Yeah.
And what am I believing about it? And to keep taking that as far as you can.
Yep.
And sometimes that'll get freedom. So can we try it out?
Sure.
Okay, are you willing to do it with you?
Yep. I'll be the guinea
And then
pig.
we can switch if we need to.
Eh.
Okay, cool. So what is something that is important to you that you're afraid of?
Feeling like a connections with people in general, and more specifically, like creating like a partnership relationship.
Yeah, like kind of romantic realm.
Right, in
partnership.
the romantic realm. Yeah, like somebody that like a romantic relationship, and making room for that in my life. Or that's at least the excuse that I use sometimes, that I don't have like room for it right now.
Okay, cool. So what is the thing that you're afraid of? What are you afraid of?
I think I'm afraid of like disappointment and judgment and heartbreak. Like, yeah.
Like basically, I'm afraid that it'll end poorly.
Yeah.
Is that the judgment?
Yeah. Well, I think judgment of like who I am. I think more specifically, it's probably a fear of being like fully known.
Yeah.
That I am worthy, like who I am is worthy of being fully known. And if I put that out there, is that going to be judged by my partner?
So it's like, I'm afraid either of really being myself in a relationship and having that be not liked.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's that I won't be able to put myself fully, like make myself fully open.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're like intertwined. But I think ultimately it's that I won't be able to be myself.
Yeah.
Because of this fear.
Yeah. That kind of sounds like there's an either or.
Yeah.
It's like either what it seems to be in the fear, system is either I will have to hide myself to be liked.
Right.
Or I'll be myself and not be liked.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then we might go like, and what is scary about that? Right. So, so let's take the one road of like, I'm truly myself.
Okay.
And then I'm rejected by a person that I'm dating.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what are you afraid of? Like, what is the fear of being rejected by that person?
I think that I ultimately, even though it's not necessarily the case, and I can like tell myself that in my mind, it's that then that says something about who I am. Like if I am wholly who I am and someone rejects that, then what does that say about who I am?
Yeah.
And I 100% can rationalize, like it doesn't say anything.
Yeah, well, that's
But the fear is still there.
But the point of this exercise is not to judge the fear,
Yeah.
the beliefs in the fear system.
Okay.
It's to get present to them.
Yeah.
because then we can look at them.
Yeah.
Right. And I know that you've done a lot of work and that you're able to look at it from a different perspective.
Yeah.
But the thing here is that sometimes we get embarrassed.
Yeah.
Or whatever,
Yeah.
that like that fear's going on because
Yes.
we're like, I know that's not true, but
Yeah.
right?
100%.
But like the thing to get is that some part of you is believing that.
Yeah. A
And
big
so
part
to
of me
like
is.
drop the judgment of the fear, it's just
Yeah.
a system that's happening.
Yeah.
And to just get present to what is being believed in that system.
Yeah.
You know, without the judgment, and then get as far. I feel like there's a point where it's like, oh,
Yeah.
I don't actually have to be afraid of that.
Yeah.
You know, so it sounds like the next thing is like, I'm afraid that a relationship will somehow show me that I'm truly not good enough.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Does that
Yeah.
sound
That
right?
like who I am isn't likable, isn't enough, isn't worthy of like the connection that I desire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is there fear behind that? Like what that would mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think it just, I guess, like whether I'm enough or not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Which is like a fear that I think pervades my life in many areas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this particular scenario might be one where you'd have to face the awful truth of how unlikable and unlovable and awful you are.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So what is it like to look at that?
I think that if I was looking at it for the first time, it would be kind of like eye-opening a little bit, to like realize really like the various levels or layers that are occurring, and that I probably usually just look at it at like the top layer, maybe one layer down, but really don't like dig all the way down
Yeah.
to it being like, oh, well, this is the core of the core. But also because of my personality, now I'm like, okay, but like, now what?
Yeah. Well, that's the question. Because it sounds to me like where we're at is, I'm afraid that I just might not be likable, or that I'm like not worthwhile
Yeah.
or something.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So if I can get present to, there's a part of me that's actually believing that. That's what the fear is coming from.
Yeah.
What if I'm truly worthless? Then what do you do?
I'm not sure, because I feel like what I tend to try and do is look for examples in my life that show that that is not the case. I look at my meaningful, fruitful, like friendships,
Yeah.
the relationships that I have with my family, the relationships that I have with my coworkers.
Yeah.
And I can recognize that what I am, who I am, is worthwhile and valuable. But then I also sometimes think about like, well, why do I need to be worthwhile and valuable? Why can't I just be? Like, and then I get it spiral into like these bigger things, like why do I need the validation of like being
Yeah.
something to someone
Yeah.
or to people? Like, why am I just like who I am is enough for me? And that's okay. And that's
Yeah.
good. And that's fine. So I think for me, I'm like trying to work through the programming of my existence is only has meaning if it has meaning to other people,
Yeah.
versus like, I love myself. I am comfortable with myself. I feel whole and complete within myself. And that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I hear you. So it sounds like there's like part of the strategy then is like, well, let me look at what's actually so in my actual relationships, right? Get out of the fear world and just look at like what's actually so. What's actually so is there's all these people around me in my family, friendships that do care for me.
Right.
And do seem to like me and do love me.
Yeah.
And that can be a source of power, just getting present to what's actually so.
Yeah.
Because in the fear world, that doesn't seem right.
No. Yeah.
So I think there is power in just like, well, just an objective, newspaper reporter that's reporting on Kristin's life would be like, there's all these people that seem to like her, right? They spend time with her. They like talking to her.
Right.
They do things together.
Yeah.
Objectively speaking, it seems like she's liked by a lot of people.
Yes.
Right? Just trying to get like, well, what's actually so? And sometimes that's really helpful. And I think then what you're looking at also is, what about the possibility of not needing any external validation to know of my own worth?
Right.
Not needing any of those friendships, not needing any of that to rest in the awareness and knowledge of my own awesome perfection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which I think is probably, if we take any fear train far enough, that's probably where we end up.
Yeah.
Somewhere like that.
Yep.
Either that or like death.
Right.
Right. Fear of like survival or fear of somehow being fundamentally flawed.
Yeah.
Unlovable, unlikable,
Yep.
hate-worthy.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I mean, I think at the end, it's like a human condition.
Yeah. So, well, it's human. It's totally human. And I would say there's a possibility of not actually believing in that system. There is a possibility of unconditional love.
Yes.
Where you get to really step out of it. And then from there, sure, I may feel some pain in a relationship or things may hurt, but I love myself no matter what.
Exactly.
And then you have a whole new range of things that are possible for you.
Yeah.
What else are you seeing in this conversation?
One thing that just sort of came up for me too when we were talking about unconditional love and being enough within yourself is I think we all also have a tendency to put expectations on our partners. And I think that when we're able to look inward and really truly feel complete and content with who we are, then that provides a level of freedom as well for both you and your partner to then not feel kind of these fears like, oh, I'm not going to measure up, or amongst other things probably. But I think it provides some freedom within a relationship to know like we like each other because we like each other. And I don't necessarily need you to do anything but be who you are.
Have you experienced that?
I'm trying very hard to like do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a challenge because the only way to experience in partnership like a feeling of true acceptance is to feel like we're not hiding anything.
Yeah.
Right. Because as long as we're hiding something, we're always going to wonder, do they really accept me for who I am?
Yep.
Or just because I'm hiding this thing?
Yeah.
So to really look at like, what is it that I'm hiding? Because probably that's the thing we're not accepting in ourselves.
Yeah.
And that's why we're hiding it from someone else.
Yeah. Well, and I think on the flip side too, even if you're not hiding anything, feeling like, well, what are they hiding from me? And instead of taking that to a place of fear, like, what are they hiding from me? Why don't they feel comfortable enough with me to share, to just say like, they'll share if they want to share. Like that doesn't really have anything to do with me. That's their fear of whatever they're bringing to the relationship. And like, I think if you can be okay with like this is who I am. I'm going to share as openly and honestly as I can. I hope that you feel comfortable doing the same, but I'm not going to force you and I'm not going to judge you if you don't. I think it's doable.
I will accept you only as long as you are authentic.
Right.
I mean, that's what we'll get into.
Yeah.
Right. So I would accept you if you were really being yourself.
Right.
But since you're not.
Yeah. Exactly.
It's like a weird form of non-acceptance.
Exactly.
Yeah. Cool. How are we doing? Is this good?
Yeah.
I have like other things that I want to talk about, but
all
I feel
right.
like
I don't know what we are on time length.
I have no idea. Listeners,
Somebody
go
will
ahead
tell us.
and write in the comment section if you'd like us to conclude now. We'll take a look back retrospectively. And no, that was great. Hey, thank you for being willing to share about that and explore that. I think there's a lot of other places we could do those kinds of dives, like in work, in our careers, and probably, I imagine, for many of us, one of the scariest things that might also be the most awesome thing we could do is leave a career that we're not satisfied in.
Yeah.
And that's another fruitful place to do a deep dive of like, what am I actually afraid of? Because sometimes we'll just be like, oh, I just couldn't do that. I just couldn't.
Right.
And I know a lot of people
I have too many responsibilities.
Former legal career that hate their jobs, can't stand it. And when I mention like, well, what about leaving? They're like, oh, I just couldn't. And it's like, oh, well, that's a cool place to explore. What is that? What is that fear about? So I imagine there's some other places we could dive into this. So stay tuned, everyone.
Yes.
More to come on really looking at fear in a way that'll give us freedom from it.
Okay, so to conclude, if you guys want to join us with a practice this week, I think the practice is to just be aware and mindful of when fear comes up for you. What does it feel like? What's the dialogue that's happening in your mind? And just to be curious about it, no judgment, or as little judgment as you can muster. And just if you want to journal, if you want to write it down so you can look back, or if you just want to be mindful about it, whatever works for you guys is the way to do it, because the practice is for you. Anything to add on that?
Thanks. And I guess the thing to add is fear can get in our way.
Yeah.
But I don't think it helps to have a perspective that there's something wrong with me because of fear.
Right.
So there's places all over where I'm like, wow, I would kind of love it if this fear wasn't there, but it is.
Right.
And there's nothing wrong with me for that. There's things it's designed to protect us from.
Absolutely.
So in that exploration, really to truly not bring judgment to fear, just notice and start to see where there might be opportunities to break free of it, but not have it be something wrong with you.
Right. Yeah. I think that's powerful. Yeah. Okay. So everybody, if you want to connect with us, you can find us at cultivatingcouragepodcast.com. We would love for you to leave comments about what was really meaningful to you about this episode. We would love to have you leave comments about how your practice is going. We'll do our best to get back to you. You can also email us through the website. Matt, if people want to connect directly with you, where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, Matty Maxwell, Matty Maxwell. And you can also Google my name, I guess.
Google me. We'll have links to all of Matt's stuff on the website.
Yeah, that's good.
So just go to cultivatingcouragepodcast.com. And if you want to connect with me, you can find me on Instagram. It's Robinson Kristin, Kristin. Or you can go to thrivecoachingstudio.com. And I think that's a wrap.
Yeah.
All
Thanks,
right.
y'all.
Thank you.